so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Hetsch and Professor Schulz. Thanks.
I think that I can speak for Mike and as well as myself and say we are thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for coming out this evening, and we are ready to go, I think. I wanted to begin our discussion tonight with some positioning. Mike and I are both organization theorists, and we come from a background that sees branding as an opportunity for organizations, not just to relate to consumers, but to all the stakeholder groups. And I think therein lies our connection to the communication world. We have been talking about differences between product branding and corporate branding until we're blue in the face. And thankfully, I think that the world has come to understand the differences between these things. Clearly, the marketing mindset is one of relating the organization's products to its consumers and customers. But when we go into corporate branding, we're really expanding that point of view tremendously. So we're going way beyond just the connection or the relationship between consumers, customers, and brands and organizations to all the stakeholder groups. And I'm sure I don't need to convince you in the field of communications how important the other stakeholder groups really are to defining not just the brand that a corporation uses, but the corporation itself. However, things always move and change, and the second wave of branding, which is really about moving into corporate branding, is slowly and painfully going to, we believe, be replaced by something else sooner or later. And we always like to try and keep an eye on where things are headed. At the end of our book, Taking Brand Initiative, we tried to imagine what the third wave of branding might look like. And in our ideas and minds, it's really got to do with what we're not sure what to call. Perhaps those of you out there with better word language can help us with. We're currently calling the enterprise mindset. This is a term we've borrowed from the financial community who talks about enterprise value. And it's pretty much the same idea. Let's not just value the business, its assets, but all of its activities, all of the value added that it brings to the world. The enterprise idea in branding is really about extending the concept of stakeholder engagement and involvement to actually consider what we as an enterprise are doing collectively together. So what are all those interests and all those people that make up the stakeholder group, which includes everybody inside the organization as well as all those who care about us and have a stake outside? What is it we're trying to do together? And what if we branded that enterprise? We'll come back to this idea a little later in the talk, but I wanted to lay out sort of the larger ambition of the work that Mike and I have been doing for the last 15 years or so together. The model that we have been operating with for some time now, and we've given you a copy of the original HBR article that first presented this idea, is a model of alignment between vision, culture, and images. But at the heart of that alignment idea is some work that we have done in our academic lives on organizational identity. So in our view, alignment really rests primarily on getting the identity of the organization behind the brand. And to give you some insight into what we mean by that, we go back to George Herbert Mead. You've probably heard about his work on social identity. And the basic idea that Mead presented was that our identities as individuals are not our own to keep. That in fact, the society in which we are a part of gives lots of information to us, especially as young children, that helps us to figure out who we are. And that information that gets fed to us through interchanges with first our parents and siblings and later our friends and educational experiences forms in the mind a sense of me. So we hear from others, you're a good boy, you're a messy girl, you're this, you're that. And that forms the first foundation of identity in the sense that after a while we figure out that people referring to us, there must be something there they're referring to. especially somewhere around the age of 2, we hear about my eye, my little nose, my toy, and suddenly we take ownership of that idea. That's mine. Get out. My room. And any of you who have raised children know that that's a very distinctive period in the development of a child. Well, Mead said that around the time that the me forms from ideas that others present to us, something comes up to resist that idea, and that's something he referred to as the I. The I is formed in response to the me as the individual realizes that it doesn't have to be a passive receptor for what others say about it, that we can exercise our will, we can have some influence on how others see us. You can see the beginnings of the communication function right here. We can do some impression management, we can argue, we can reason with others, we can try to get others to see us in the way we want to be seen. And so there is, according to Mead, an ongoing conversation throughout our lives between what others say about us and what we know ourselves to be. And it is out of that conversation that identity is formed. It doesn't belong to us alone. It belongs to those who are a part of us because we have relationships to them. Mike and I have taken this basic idea to the level of organizations. We believe that the processes that form identity at the individual level are the same processes that form identity in organizations. That is to say, the organizational me, or the us, is formulated by the many, many forms of information and feedback we get from the external environment, against which the I, or the we in the case of a collective, resists or feels complemented by the feedback we get and reacts and responds to that feedback in an ongoing conversation. We try to understand who we are internally, often contextualized by the culture of the organization, which is a very important part of this idea of identity. But in our communication outward and the reactions we get from others, we get plenty of feedback from them. And so there is also this opportunity for a conversation out of which we believe the identity of the organization forms. To put this in a more academic context, we've drawn the model a little bit differently. The culture and the image, of course, are the far sides of this model, and we have specified what these various processes might look like. But by and large, the thing that is most important to focus on is that there are two movements in this conversation. One is from the outside in. It involves the feeding back of information from the images of others that gets processed inside the organization, is often filtered through lenses that are colored by the culture of the organization. But the response, when it is processed thoroughly inside the organization, is one that is contextualized and is an expression of true cultural understandings. And so the idea of an identity conversation underlies our conception of the best way to manage a brand. That is, you have to listen to your stakeholders, not just your fans, but also your critics. And you need to be cognizant of who you are as an organization, how you see yourselves internally, and what cultural context you use to make sense of the information that you're processing before you respond. This prevents you from making those knee-jerk reactions that, of course, communication specialists are always trying to keep their top management from engaging in. And this allows the organization to make really sustained responses in the tone of voice of the organization and, of course, its brand. Now, organizations don't come to this understanding easily. That is, most organizations have to go through some painful moments in their lives, just as individuals do as they're growing up. I see a smile on Thomas's face because he's from McDonald's. McDonald's faced exactly this kind of situation a few years back when Super Size Me, the film, was made public. And I imagine most of you have seen Super Size Me. Anyone not know this film? Yeah, it's pretty much part of the popular culture these days. This could not have been a happy moment for McDonald's. It was kind of in-your-face criticism